Follow Marcus Garvey today. Why can't follow? Come on. Follow Marcus Garvey today. Why can't follow? Everywhere we go, I and I will go. And everything he say, oh yes it's true. So I can follow you. Come on, follow, Marcus, yeah, why can't follow? He never commit no crime. He always do right. So why can't follow Marcus Garvey? Why can't follow?
Yes, greetings and good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Unity and Solidarity TV. My name is Bakari Makeru, and I have the honor to be your host as we get ready to embark on another big and serious conversation this evening. So, thank you for tuning in. And of course, we kindly ask that you share the our YouTube channel, which is Unity and Solidarity TV. And while you're at it, feel free and peruse and watch some of our past episodes touching on different topics such as education, culture, politics, Pan-Africanism, and the list goes on and on and on. So again, please remember to like and share and subscribe the page. And of course, we always look forward to hearing from you. So, just a few announcements before we get into our discussion today. I want to let you know that this Sunday, June 29, 2025, Malkia's Kitchen will be at the Mango Fest in Ebenezer, selling everything mango from her signature juices such as mango, mango and star fruit, mango and pineapple, mango and passion fruit, and mango papaya. And when it comes to the desserts for your sweet tooth, there will be mango cake, mango and plantain cake, and mango chow. So of course, if you have time on Sunday, June 29th, you can always pass by in Ebenezer, where they'll be having their highly popular, very popular, and very well attended Mango Fest. And of course, you can always visit the other vendors that will be on hand. And continuing further, on Tuesday, July 1st, which is Emancipation Day, Malkia's Kitchen again will be at the Emancipation Day commemoration. And she has a very extensive menu from fried jacks, chicken and dumpling, chicken foot sauce, saltfish and cattle tongue dumpling or fungi, stew pigtail and cattle tongue dumpling and fungi, of course, okra soup, bread pudding, banana cake, pumpkin bakes, spinach bakes, and of course, her homemade punches. But not so quickly, because you know who else will be at Emilia Wilson Park on July 1st? That's right, you guessed it. R&R Unlimited Snacks and Puncher Creamers. So if you want the best loaded golden brown pastel cheese, fried to perfection, then you have to pass by our table at the Emilia Wilson Park on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. We have different fillings from chicken, cheese, meat, and saltfish. And of course, you can always pre-order and then pick up. And again, I want to emphasize this. You simply cannot, and I repeat, cannot purchase pastel cheese or an item from Malkia's Kitchen without complementing it with a bottle of Pancha Crema. Ramonda's homemade Pancha Cremas are incredibly creamy, smooth in texture with the right balance of rum, sweetness, and intense flavor. Perfect beverage to complement special occasions, happy hour, or simply alone sipping in the comfort of your own home. Our must try flavors are pistachio, coconut, peanut, and of course, chocolate. So, again, if you have time, we invite you to pass by the Emilia Wilson Park on Tuesday, July 1st, right? And to be able to pick up some of these goodies, and of course, to pass by the Mango Fest and see what all Malkia has to offer to you. Now, the title of today's discussion is St. Martin's Debt Trap, Myth or Reality? My guest is no stranger to the public and has been extremely vocal about this contentious issue for some years, if not decades. In July 2021, he presented a motion which called on the then government to enter talks with its Dutch counterparts regarding the cancellation of St. Martin's debt. The motion was unanimously supported, and since then, it is difficult to point out whether the conversation has ever taken place or even added to the agenda. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome my guest, which is none other than Mr. George Pantophlet, and I want to thank him for accepting the invitation to be a guest on Unity and Solidarity TV.
Well, good evening to one and all, but especially Mr. Bakari Makeru, which is your right name. Indeed, it is a privilege for to be invited on this podcast. We have had
Yes.
many important programs. Some have been able to follow, others not. But what I believe persons have lacked is the issue of information. So those who are viewing, I do hope, and not that I do hope, I'm sure that once we get into the discussion that you learn, and even I think you'll have a chance to also probably and at your own time to come up with ideas as to how to address this very important matter of what I've been pursuing is debt cancellation. I want to thank Mr. Bakari again because I believe that this matter is so important, and there are those who have not understood the importance of how it is affecting us today and will affect future generations if it is not addressed as soon as possible. Again, thanks again for your invitation.
All right. All
Did
right.
I say who I
Excellent.
am? Yes, did I say,
Yeah,
my
but
name
still,
is
because we will
okay. Let
always
me
have
yes.
persons new. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. For those who are viewing for the first time, who have known me, heard me, or seen me for the first time, my name is George Pantophlet. I was a former member of the Parliament of the Netherlands Antilles. I was also State Secretary of Health of the Netherlands Antilles, and also a former member of Parliament of the St. Martin, of St. Martin. So I do have some experience in this field, and of course, no one knows everything, but no one knows nothing. And I'm still at the point where I can learn, but I believe that it is time that not only I write and give information, but also I want to encourage you to be part of this because I always say there's no pressure better than people pressure. And I believe that's the language that governments understand, that parliaments understand. So this evening, as we discuss the issue of my heartbeat, which is debt cancellation, I hope that you will be informed, and also, as I said, that you will join in this discussion and let your opinions and so on be heard, because no matter how critical it might seem at times, there's some persons who, when you say some things, persons criticize in a negative sense, but we should never take it negative. It is their opinion. You should look at what they're criticizing and see exactly if you can learn from it and probably also build on it. So that is important for me. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So let's start off this way, right? During your term in office, as I said earlier, you presented a motion, right? Again, unanimously passed in Parliament, right? However, since then, one gets a feeling that the topic does not receive the level of attention that many of us believe it should. So my first question is, do you agree with that observation?
Or let me use the word to start off the sentence. Unfortunately, true. I do agree. But just to set a foundation of how we got to this, it was in 2010 when the Nielsen Tillies was being dismantled, and the Dutch government decided that will pay off a certain amount of the debt that is owed by the Nielsen Tillies, which at the time was something like 3.6 billion euros. They paid off some 2 billion euros, which left Curacao with 1.6 billion. But interestingly enough, St. Martin also ended up with a debt. And for us, that was interesting because the fact remains that St. Martin was not allowed to borrow. That was the responsibility of Nelson Tillies, of course, dominated by Curacao, who incurred this debt. But unfortunately, after the dismantling, St. Martin ended up with a debt of 300 million guilders in 2010. And interestingly enough, there's something that I think that is not mentioned. One of our challenges has always been the issue of our administration with regards to our finances. And unfortunately, the Netherlands had even asked St. Martin at the time, what debts do you have? Because we had something called creative financing, where at the time the contractor would do all the work, he'll build or whatever and so on, and then of course make an arrangement with the government as to how they're going to repay that money. Because again, as I said, legally based on the established laws and so on, St. Martin was not allowed to borrow. And because of that discrepancy with regards to the financial administration, there's certain debts which St. Martin could have had paid off had they had their finances in order to do so. So I don't want to say that we are not responsible either, but we are also responsible for certain amount of debt that was not paid because of what we have always had in the past, unfortunately, is inappropriate financial management, which is plaguing us up to today. And I do hope that that this government and this generation, that this can be solved. And getting back to the 300 million guilders, in 2010, when we were having our first discussion as a parliament, it came to light that St. Martin owed 900 million guilders. Now, how that came about, again, was loans that were given by former governments. And what I found interesting, during my tenure as a member of the Island Council, which was 2003 to 2010, you hardly had any discussion about that. It seemed that everything was okay. But what bothered me was, one of the things I always said to the then government as an Island Council member, that time we had commissioners, I said, do we have a reserve? Because you can never tell, God forbid, as a disaster strikes in Martin, at least we have a reserve we can fall back on. I was told, yes, we do. But even up to today, I was never told the amount. As a member of the Island Council, it appears that the commissioners at the time, Executive Council, controlled that part. So I could never say then what the actual amount was. But in 2010, after we attained a separate status, we had our first parliamentary meeting. It came to light that we owed 900 million guilders because there were loans that were given during a period of the last 10 or 15 years or whatever. So looking at that situation, I said, wait a minute. How can we pay this amount of debt? Because it was 300 million in 2000 and after the dismantling, and now in 2020, it is 900 million guilders. So I started doing some research. I said, wait a minute, let us see what was happening here. And then that was during COVID, as you all can remember. The International Monetary Fund, in a report, and I'm saying this all the time, Mr. Bakari, I am sorry, I can't find it. I know it's Article 4, because they come every year and do some kind of
Chapter 4.
investigation.
Yeah, it's called Chapter 4
Exactly.
consultation. Yes.
Exactly. And they always come and they tell you how you're doing, how you're not doing. I can tell you outright, I don't believe in nothing that they say. They set a structure in place and you got to follow their structure. If not, you're not complying or you're complying. And most of the times, you're not complying. But honestly, in this case, I love what I read when they said that the Dutch government should not be issuing any more loans to St. Martin. They should start giving grants, and that had to do with the issue of COVID, but we know how that went, where to the over them 300 million dollars additional to the
Yes.
900 million at the time. So
Yes.
after seeing this, I said, let me come with a motion. I spoke to my colleagues. I said, look, I'm going to come with a motion. And it wasn't much discussion because they understood that basically what I found, and I will say what I found because I will say it here, and any one of them who are listening or viewing or whatever, they would have to agree with me that none of them thought of that issue.
Okay.
I said, let us ask the government to end their discussions, request debt cancellation, no debt restructuring or repayment.
Correct.
Because at the time, and even up to now, it turned out that we're paying the Dutch government 12.7 million guilders on an annual basis. Now, after 80 years, you will still be paying. So I said, look, let us don't talk about no restructuring. Let us talk about debt cancellation. I made the motion. I passed it around. Some little cosmetic changes were made to it. And then it was approved unanimously, as you said. I continued following because my government, or the government that I supported, was in office at the time. And I spoke to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. I said, how are the discussions going? I was told that the Dutch don't want to discuss it. I say, it's not up to the Dutch to discuss it. It's up to you to push it.
Correct.
You're the one that needs debt relief, not the Dutch.
Correct.
But of course, unfortunately, it didn't up to date. Not much talk is going on. But I think I said this more than once on the radio program when I had discussions concerning the issue. I had a face-to-face discussion with Ms. Alexander van Huffelen, who was the state secretary at the time.
Yes.
And we met upstairs in Parliament. And she said that we are brothers and sisters and so on. And she spoke very nicely and eloquently. And I said, since we are brothers and sisters, then what about the debt cancellation?
Yes.
And she leaned back. She said, it will be a hard sell. I said, sell it. I looked around. My colleagues were silent. But I didn't look for the support because I knew exactly what was happening. Because, again, what's unfortunate is that they lack then, and apparently today, still lack the courage to pursue a matter which is in the interest of the people.
That's right.
Of not only this generation, but also future generations.
That's right.
And then I met afterwards with the he's now the member of the first chamber. That's Mr. Jerome Recourt. He was a member of the second chamber at the time. He's now a member of the first chamber. We had a meeting at the Holland House, sit-down discussion and so on. And I said to him, I said, what about the debt cancellation? I said, because the king apologized, the former prime minister apologized. What about the debt cancellation? He said to me, MP, the Dutch taxpayers' money. And I said to him, as I'm saying right now, I said, don't go there. I said, you worked me for free. I said, you owe me. That's what I told him. And the conversation ended there because his color changed. Because the fact is, I keep telling people all the time, if I'm discussing matters that are personal, then sometimes I'll just be passive. But when it comes to the people's business, I am not passive. I'm extremely aggressive because it is not about me, it's about the people of St. Martin. I've even been told, but George, you're no longer in Parliament, rest yourself. I said, rest myself. I said, I still have health, I still have life in me, and there's a responsibility, I believe, as one who knows the importance of preparing the grounds for future generation to do what I can now and not wait until tomorrow.
Correct.
Then we had a meeting with the CFT, Committee for Financial Supervision. I call them, they are the government of St. Martin. They are the powerhouse of St. Martin. I can't remember the name that I gave to them when I heard that the first time, But the director at the meeting, we had a closed door meeting because they want all their meetings to be closed door, which I find is interesting because after they go and they talk about what we discussed in the meeting,
Correct.
you know.
Correct.
So I said to, can't remember his name right now. I said, look, we need debt cancellation. He said to me, he said, but it is a political issue. I said, you deciding my budget, tell me where to cut, where not to cut. Is that not a political issue? Case rested there. But my
Yes.
point is, it is not in their interest. It is in our interest. It is in St. Martin's interest that we get this debt canceled. We went to Curacao during the IPCO meeting, and there was Aruba. And what normally happens, there's a tripartite where you have Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin meets first. And then later on, the delegation of Netherlands take part in the discussions also. And that's when I find it was a time now to say what I've been saying for the last 3 years. And I want to thank former Member of Parliament, Mr. Orlando Bryson, because Mr. Bakari, I don't know if you saw the video where I spoke about the issue, and he recorded it. It
Okay.
was not even on my mind to record it, but he did. He said when
Okay.
he heard I said, he decided to record it right away, and I thank him for that.
Okay.
And the Dutch persons who were there, some were kind of embarrassed. One of them acknowledged that, yes, I said it is a fact that the Netherlands are a rich country today because of slavery. And St. Martin also played a role in that because you made money off of St. Martin with the salt and so on.
Yes.
But my concern was when I mentioned, I said, there's no other way. I would say, where would St. Martin, Curacao, Aruba be had there been no slavery? Developed or underdeveloped? Because today we're still called, oh, we're not really third world, but we in
We
between
have
there.
all
So
kind of names. We have
exactly,
all kind of names today.
created by them. So during that meeting, that IPCO meeting, I said plain, I said, the only way out for St. Martin, because I didn't talk for the others because they were there, they should talk for themselves. I said, is debt cancellation. After the meeting, the leader of the delegation and Netherlands came to me and she said, your speech was very touching. I said, thank you, because I didn't want to really say anything further than that, because I
Yeah.
didn't want to hear touching. I want to hear what steps you're going to take
That's
after hearing
right.
that speech. You see, and those are the things where, unfortunately, if you don't apply the necessary pressure, you don't get things done. And that is why I'm glad for this opportunity, because I think it's important that, and I do hope that someone picks it up and continue, because as long as I have life and breath, I will continue to address the issue because it is important. It is not, what bothers me is that there's some of my people who feel that we owe, that we are beggars. No, we are in this condition because we were not allowed to, on our own, develop ourselves. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the finances, I don't even recall, Mr. Bakari, when we were trying to, the minister at the time, Mr. Arthur Ilya, was trying to float bonds to the amount of
Yes.
75 million guilders.
Yes.
And people say that we are not a colony. If we are not a colony, then how come this state secretary, I think Knops, I think his name was, I don't want to say the wrong one, but I think it's Knops, he said, if we do that, we're going to get an instruction. And our Minister of Finance pulled back. Some say he should not have done so. But my thing is, in order to get some things done, you need support. And the
Yes.
support to get it done apparently was not there. Otherwise, might have been different. But the whole matter is, we are slaves, because I always say this. The borrower is slave to the lender. So as long as we continue this trend where we are consistently allowing ourselves to be put in a situation where we have to borrow, but not from anywhere else but the Dutch. And if they don't agree based on the Constitution, then we can't borrow. And people are okay with this. It is not whether St. Martin is financially able to repay her debt. It is the fact that they have to decide. So in order to decide, they want to maintain control. It's all about control on St. Martin in order to get their way or whatever they want to do, to make sure that whatever they want to, they decide that that's how it has to be and no other way. No other
That's
way.
great. And just to go back a bit, I always smile when I hear persons say it is Dutch taxpayers' money, right? And I say that because when I look at, and I might be going a little off topic here, but when I look at the amount of money that Holland spends, right, on their royal house alone, I wonder whether the Dutch population or the taxpayers, are in support of that. When I take note of the wars that they are funding around the world, and then for them, and they do it with so much conviction, whether it breaks international law or not, but they do it with so much conviction because might is right. And they go around the world preaching democracy and good governance and so forth. But when it comes to these particular islands, they seem to have amnesia. They seem to be using a different ruler, right, to measure by. You understand what I'm saying? So I always
Yes,
laugh. And what makes me laugh even more, right? And I say laugh, but I really mean,
I know exactly what you
right?
mean.
Um, but when I look at the instrumental role that the former Netherlands Antilles played in protecting the Netherlands during the Second World War, okay? Because we know, because of the oil, the bauxite, and the strategic locations, is one of the ways that the Allies were able to assist to protect the Netherlands and such. You see, so they can talk about taxpayers' money however much they want. And another theory I have, and I'm still investigating, because the first thing I learned in when I was at university was in an economics class, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? So how is it that the Netherlands is able to um, borrow money at zero interest rates? It makes me wonder if is it really taxpayers' money, or were they able to tap into European funds for development and then channel it through to the islands, but of course putting their spin on it and presenting it as though it's coming from the Dutch taxpayers. So that's an avenue I'm busy exploring right now, because we all know there's certain things in life you can't escape. Taxes, debt, right? As in physical debt, and debt to Dutch people. We that's like standard across the world. What are your thoughts about that?
You mentioned the issue with the, whether they're pleased about how they spend money. Let me put it this way, on themselves. If
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, they are lately reluctant to use their golden carriage, if you'll call it, because
Yes.
people have criticized it tremendously,
That's right.
you know. But when you made at that point, what also came to mind is the issue of the problem between Europe and created issue of Russia. And let
Yes.
me say this as an individual, because I'm not in any political party, defending any party or whatever.
That's right.
I don't see Russia attacking Europe. I don't see it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense at all politically.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense human wise. It doesn't make sense at all, because then you're looking to attack the entire world, because then the US has a chance to get involved and so on, And even though China is there, I don't see China supporting Russia on that in that
Yeah.
instance. China's
Yeah.
more, let me look at the economics of the whole issue and discuss these
Exactly.
things. But why when you say that about them, about the Dutch not being pleased, the Dutch taxpayer not being pleased about what's taking place, right now as we speak, I do not know if you are aware that the former Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Rutte,
Oh.
and he and I had a face-to-face encounter before he got to that position there. And I forget, he came into the Island Council, and a kind of that come these familiarization visits.
Okay.
And the first thing he did was, because the leader at the time, Mr. William Mann, was in Curacao busy discussing the matters of constitutional affairs and so on, separate status. So he told me to fill in. And I was found it strange because I was a newcomer, you know. There were those who were there longer than I am. And he asked me to fill in, but I went anyhow. And the member of parliament at the time of the second chamber, instead of being, as a cordial and so on, the first thing he did, because it was just myself, at the time, Commissioner Sarah Scott Williams and Lieutenant Governor Franklin Richards, and they were seated across from us, about 7 or 8 of them. And he said to me, what's happening with justice on St. Martin? You know, and he was speaking Dutch. And because I was a bit annoyed, I decided I will not speak Dutch to him. I'll speak English. And I said to him, when it comes to matters of such importance, I'll speak the language I master best. So I'll speak to you in English, you are allowed to speak to me in Dutch. And I said to him, you're talking to the wrong person. When it comes to justice, that's Nelson Tilly's Minister of Justice is in Curacao. You have to address the question to him, you know?
Yes.
And then, you know, but from then I realized the questions he was asking, I got a kind of a feeling that this gentleman had an issue. And of course, I turned out to be right even up to today. And why do I bring up his name? He is right now State Secretary of the United Nations. And the first one of the first things of NATO, yes. One of the first things he said, Russia's going to attack. Russia preparing to attack. We need to increase defense. Now, let me say this. I am translating, I interpreting for myself those words. Look, this is time to make money, because if you have war prepared defense, you can spend money into planes and missiles and so on. So you big boys, it is time to make money. That's how I see it.
Correct.
And the fact of the matter is, right now, Holland, all other European countries also, because they are afraid of Russia. For me, they're afraid of the wrong person, but it's okay. The wrong country, but it's okay. That's their decision. The Netherlands has agreed to spend an additional 16 to 19 billion euros on defense. But you can't write off 500 million euros to St. Martin.
Correct. And that's a contradiction.
You know, and I'm asking the people, what's wrong with you people? Don't you think that's an issue?
Correct.
You see? But again, it's who we are, how we looked at. Prime Minister Mark Rutte at the time even said, he said he can give the other countries, that was during COVID, goodies. He said not even loans, okay? Not even loans. But we down here, and I'm talking about St. Martin, of course, Caribbean, other islands, but we down here know you have to pay. You know, you have to pay no matter what. You have to cut salaries, cut here, cut this, you know what I mean? And I keep telling people all the time, when you look at these individuals and these organizations, these institutions, that's why I have no confidence in the IMF, in the World Bank, in the what you call it, the World Trade Organization. It doesn't still exist. I don't hear about them too much now. But I have them because they are not neutral. They are biased. They have their agenda, and that is what they will carry out no matter what. You know, so I have no trust at all in them. But back to the issue of the Netherlands, they are willing to spend billions of euros on, and again, this is me speaking, on an imaginary enemy, instead of looking at the real issues that confronts them and us. Because yes, we are part of the kingdom, and you know, too many people feel that they're safer in the kingdom because they look at politicians and saying, yeah, these politicians, you know, you can't trust them. They're corrupt and this and that. And I keep saying all the time, people are the ones who are in charge. I keep telling them you could have a 4-year term, but you don't have to wait for 4 years if you want to send them home.
True.
If you go on the street and say, look, go home. I don't want it anymore. People pressure, you have to go home.
Yeah.
But again, people think, oh, once they're a member of parliament, you can't do them anything because they're there to wait 4 years. Or if they amongst themselves agree to make a change, then things can change. No. But again, that's only me speaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my thing is, I want to say to the people of St. Martin, those who are viewing, because even, I don't know if you saw it, the She's from Jamaica. I can't remember her name. I saw it yesterday, but she's busy, or she sent a letter to King Charles
Okay,
telling him
yes.
to put the issue of reparations at the Privy Council, I think it is, right? Am I
Yes.
correct? You know,
Yes.
because he, in his position as king, can do so.
Yeah.
Because they are seeing the importance of this matter. And you cannot tell yourself it will not happen, because a lot of the European countries say, no, they don't want to talk about it. You could say whatever you want. I'm going to keep bringing
Correct.
it to the table. And this lady from South Africa, her name is Panda. I think you know that lady?
Yes, yes. She's a
She was,
foreign, she's a
okay,
former foreign minister of South
good.
Africa. Love her.
Yes,
Yeah,
well,
love
I listened to a little podcast from her, and Mr. Bakari, I can tell you,
her.
I
Yeah, she's
mean,
solid.
I love to hear her speak,
Yeah, she's
with
solid.
confidence, knowledge, what I mean, and no kind of fear at all. You see,
Correct.
but she was asked something about the issue of, can't remember whether it's reparation or something else, but she said, look, she said, oh, and she mentioned apartheid. She said, look, my grandfather fought for it, he didn't see it. My father fought for it, he didn't see it. I saw it. In
Yeah.
other words, she said you have to keep trying and
Yeah.
trying and trying until you get through. My father used to tell me, if you keep hitting the same spot all the time, it's gonna break.
That's
You
true.
know, it's
That's
gonna break.
true.
You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying to those who are viewing, do not allow yourself to say that it is impossible. Reparations are not possible. I am saying reparations is a task, yes. That is why I push for debt cancellation. Why do I push for debt cancellation? Because for me, the figures are known. The figures are known, you know what I'm saying? And since they're known, let us start there first. The
Correct.
other things we can discuss and so on. And when it comes to expertise, because we have always been told, St. Man doesn't have this, St. Man doesn't have that. I told the government that was there, the government that I supported, I said, look, we have assistance so-called from the Netherlands. They're paying this, they're paying that. I said they should be paying everyone. Everyone should be paying, because the fact is, they are the ones who are responsible. People say, stop blaming the. Yes, as long as I'm in the structure and the system I'm in, I'm going to blame them. When I'm on my own, running my country myself, then I can talk about being responsible for everything. But right now, I am constitutionally so-called a country, which is nonsense, because we are part of the Netherlands. They are a country. We are a constitutional state. We're not even a
Correct.
country. Okay?
Correct.
And they determine how far, how much, what you can do. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as they can decide, I'm not accepting full responsibility. They got to say, okay, I am willing, which you're not going to do unless you put pressure on them, to work with you. When I was in the Netherlands about 4 years ago, they were talking about, our administration and so on, and how things go so slow. And one of them traveled, a group of them traveled to civil servants from the Netherlands, not the parliamentarians, went to, I think, Curacao, and some came to St. Martin, I think it was. And what I heard from them, and what we all heard over Curacao and St. Martin, we smiled. They said, how do you all manage? Because we have 100 people doing this one thing, and you have one person doing 100 things. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
the civil servants, understood that, wait a minute, what we are saying is a complete different picture when you go to reality, see, because it is not as we think it is.
Correct.
So I was happy that that was noticed, but again, you have to make sure that those in the top positions also understand what is going on, because I also explained the civil servants are the one who do the groundwork. They know what's happening on the ground.
Correct.
And it always amazes me. I don't want to go off track from the subject, but it always amazes me when persons become, especially ministers, that they don't sit down and listen and find exactly what is happening. Because, minister, you are a newcomer on this thing. You might have some experience if it happened that you worked in a particular department in that ministry.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're a newcomer. Sit down with your staff and know what's going on. I've always said this. If you want things to be done properly, the first thing you do, and I never forget on Sesame Street many, many years ago, this little 5-year-old was asked, what is the first thing you do when you go to school? She said, make friends with the teacher. And why do I use this example? You as a minister coming into a ministry, call all your staff, sit down with them. What is going on? Are you in the right scale? Are you getting paid properly? Is this go? You have any kind of issues that I can assist you with? Because once you do that, and if you're interested in them, I
Yeah.
don't see anywhere, unless, of course, they have their own agenda, them working against it. They'll work to support you and make you shine, you
Yeah.
know. But again, that's for mature people.
True. So true. And even when I make my observations, right? They would say that there's no discussion about debt cancellation, but at the same time, they would put, of course, we would take loans, and then while the loans are being activated, there is now a number of funds coming our way, right? Funds for small business, funds for repairs, funds for all sorts of things. And I am saying that if there was not such a large chunk of our budget leaving our shores to service the debts, we would be less dependent, right, on these grants, for specific projects and such. So it almost feels as though, right, the relationship has changed again to the point where you are just a consumer of debt, right? And then the things in what you need, they will be supplying it for you. Whereas we know that in our culture, we try to be as self-reliant as possible. You understand? To the point where now, if something happened, they're like, I wonder if the Dutch going to send us money. And oh Lord, if we don't have the Dutch, we can't survive. Because to me, that is what is happening. Before
That's
it
in the
was
mindset.
government, but now to me, what I am hearing is like, oh gosh, we cannot live without the Dutch. So they're not even saying we can't live without our government anymore. We can't live without the Dutch. So I think this is another reason why any talk about political independence, severing our political ties with them, is like blasphemous to in the minds of many persons. You see, and the thing is, and person would make the examples. You have many independent islands in the Caribbean who are free to negotiate, right? Who are free to negotiate the terms and conditions of what with whomever and on whatever basis that
Correct.
they so
Correct.
desire in the interest of
Correct.
their development. You understand?
Correct. Correct.
But seemingly again, there are sections of our community who cannot imagine an existence without the Hague playing an instrumental role. But let me ask you this.
Go
Let
ahead,
me
please.
ask you. Yeah, let me ask you this. We have the CFT, right? And whenever there are certain items in the budget, they will make their remarks and say yes or no, or they will give their opinion. We've had the CFT since 2010, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
And despite all of that supervision, we have a debt of over 1 billion guilders, right? In my mind, at least, maybe I have to go back and check the national ordinance on the CFT. But I would imagine that when I hear a Council of Financial Supervision, it would be to prevent it would be to prevent the debt from getting away from us. And don't get me wrong, because we know about COVID, we know about the hurricanes, we know about all of those factors. But again, 16 square miles and over a billion euros in debt, that raises some questions. It
Well,
really raises some questions.
I'm glad you said it, because we started at 300 million, more or less,
Yes,
2010. So
yes,
in the last 15 years, we are amassed, as you said, almost 1 billion.
yes,
Something you said there, which it is painfully true what you said. The Netherlands are looked at as if they're God, and we fail to realize that most of the years St. Martin has stood on her own 2 feet. The issue is because of how things have changed in some of the structures, and we have allowed ourselves to come to the point where we have made ourselves dependent on the Dutch. Yes, we had the hurricane and so on. We had Lois in 1995,
That's true.
and of course, as a former leader of Alliance, Mr. William Barnes said, we didn't have no task force and so on. He said they had one gentleman came in office, check all things and make sure, and then everything was done. Today you have all kind of, they brought in the World Bank as an in-between, and they're collecting some good money too. I hope people know that.
Yes,
Good money.
yes.
And while we're on the subject, grant money were placed on the central bank on the account of St. Martin's account. About 2 or 3 years ago, I asked Minister of Finance in a meeting of Parliament, I said, how much money is there? Because the fact is, if it's on a savings account, it means that you're getting a certain amount of interest.
Yes.
And at the time, I was told, and if I'm incorrect, you can always get this information and correct me. If those who are viewing can get in contact with him, I can also do so myself. But he told me, or he said in Parliament, about $20 million
Interest.
And I asked, I said, but if it is a grant, then it's my money. You could talk about the grant, but the interest is mine.
Yeah.
He said, no, they can't spend it unless they have. I said, well, what about the projects then? Then you get projects in place and use the funds.
Correct.
I'm talking about 3 years, 4 years ago. I haven't heard anything about it since. So I wonder what has happened to those interests. And those are the things I find that people should know that has taken place. But again, as you said there, the people feel that without the Dutch, we are in trouble. Whereas I'm saying it is not the case. It depends on us whether we want to move forward as we are or whether we want things to be done differently. And yes, independent don't mean independent from the world. You live on the planet.
It doesn't mean isolation.
Right,
it doesn't mean isolation.
Exactly. Right now, as we speak, I think you follow the news, but I think it's in St. Lucia, I'm not mistaken, where is it the Prime Minister or the President of Nigeria?
Oh,
is
yes.
going to be there visiting for a few days, you know what I mean? So
yes.
Now, that's an issue of foreign affairs.
Yes.
You understand? Now, we know, based on the Kingdom Charter, when it comes to foreign affairs, it is a responsibility of the Dutch government.
That's right.
You see? So there again, we are restricted.
Yes.
You understand? So all I'm saying, we will be able to determine what steps to take for our future. But right now, we are in this box where it says you can go this far and no further.
Yeah.
The debt that we have right now, it is a noose around our neck. You understand? And as a matter of fact, I show you know that in October, we were supposed to pay, and I say we because I'm part of St. Martin, 75 million guilders, but already the CFT said they know
that St.
Martin can't pay it.
Exactly.
And then Curacao had to pay 140 million, but Curacao said can only pay 40 million, and the Dutch Parliament is upset. What is going on? They can't pay it. And then you guys down here and is talking about how can we structure?
Yeah.
Come on. You know, come on. Apologies accepted or not accepted.
Yep.
Debt cancellation. I'm not paying that money.
Yeah.
You owe me. Haiti right now, you and I know Haiti.
Yes.
France owes Haiti billions. And when I don't people know this, one of the former presidents at the time, John Aristide, he said, France, you got to pay back that money.
Yes.
All at once, he was, let me put this term, deported. They picked him up and dropped him somewhere. I think it was in the Caribbean, I think it was, or someplace. I think it's
Central African Republic.
Jamaica, somewhere.
Central African Republic. Right. And then he went to South Africa after.
Exactly. You know, so, I mean, so already we see there that it is not easy, but I think that there are certain things you will not get done unless you are aggressive about it. When I say aggressive, I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking
Correct.
about being aggressive and consistent on the matter and have your facts in place, because no matter
Correct.
what you want to say, you must have your facts when you get into these discussions. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Because otherwise, they're gonna come with their manner of doing things. And
Yes.
I think I said it during a podcast I I had last week Sunday. We have to stop following the structures that these colonialists place on us.
Yes.
Stop it. We got to stop doing it, because as long as you play that game, you're not going to get out. Because it is
Correct.
their game. They set it up in a way so that they can always win, because
Correct.
they hold all the cards. So we got to understand that the issue of debt cancellation is vital. The police force, they owe
Yep.
them money. Then they say something was said about years to pay them off. And I'm saying,
Mm,
why? Why? The teachers, the nurses are complaining, and the roads need to be repaired. I
correct.
mean, we have so many things to do with when it comes to finances. I listened to the minister of VSM, Mr. Richard Bruch, talk about certain projects and so on. And I was happy that one of the members, I think of Annie, said, "You're talking about projects. Where's the money?
Yeah.
Where is the
Yeah.
money going to come from?" You understand? We had this fight at the prison, and some of the prisoners were sent to Bonaire and here and so on. We got
It's gonna
assistance from,
cost.
I think, they brought up police officers. It cost
It's
money.
gonna
Where did that
cost.
money come from? Because you
Yeah.
didn't have the money. So where did it come from? You see?
Correct.
And one of the things I said to them also, and there's so much that one can say, and I say sometimes it's a pity you can only say, and not much you can do sometimes on your own, but you have to say it and hope that somebody gets the idea and picks it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are part of the kingdom. And the former Minister of Justice, Mr. Roland Duncan, made a statement one time in Parliament. When he said it, man, I was so happy. I almost jumped out of the stool, because my thing is this. I keep saying it all the time. You are the one who colonized us. You are the one who stretched your tentacles all down this area. You are the one right now involved in all kind of things with Europe and NATO and so on, putting us in a very precarious situation because we carry the Dutch passport. Then you should be paying for defense and paying for these things, not me. And Mr. Donald said, he said, and he didn't pay them either, so I do not know how they got paid. But at the time, he owed them 3 million guilders. And
Yeah.
he said he's not paying for it. He said, you want to defend the islands, then you pay for it. What you doing
Yeah.
down here? You know what I mean? So what I'm saying, they have their own interests, but there are things we are paying for, even the justice. I was surprised to find out when they told us to cut salaries, to cut this and cut that our government is paying them. And they didn't get any cuts either.
Mm.
You understand? So if you have St. Martin, look at these things. The prosecutor's office said a couple of years ago, there's some 2 million guilders or so in fines from 2017 to that time that cannot be collected.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, that's money in the streets. That's our money. What's going on? What's
Yep.
happening with the money? And right now, I understood that the crime fund is being worked on. I really hope so, because I heard that they are also controlling this, which I find is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So again, these are the things that people are not looking at. They're not relying that St. Martin, with proper financial management, will be able to support herself. I asked that question in 2005 to a gentleman, I'll not call his name, but he's an economist. He worked at the Central Bank of Curacao at the time.
Okay.
He even worked, I think, in Holland also. I asked him,
Okay.
I said, sir, do you think St. Martin can support herself financially? He said, yes. He said, but they have to have proper financial management.
Correct.
Now, this is the economist was talking. This is a man who the Dutch told him when we went to bargain. I sitting on call his name in Holland for 7 status. They told him they wanted to keep him up there.
Oh,
Brilliant
really?
man, you understand? He said, yes. He said, no. He said, he belongs to St. Martin. And that's what we're going to come back to. They want him to stay and work there. He told them no. He said, he went as our advisor.
Yeah.
And he said, plain, he said, no. He belongs to St. Martin. And I really appreciate him for that. You know what I mean? He said,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
he had to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
with it. And he
Yeah.
told me plain, he said, we can handle it if we manage it properly. You know, the facts that I brought forward in Parliament in 2011, where I found out with the gas relation. I'm talking finances because we're talking about debt cancellation.
Yes.
They're not
Yes.
pursuing
Yes.
that. Then you got to find out how you can collect money that is available here in the meantime. while dealing with that matter,
Mm-hmm.
the casinos. And I was telling someone, I don't want to close on a casino because I can't employ you, I can't support you if you're out of
Correct.
work. That's
Correct.
reality. You know what I mean? I never gambled in a casino in my life. I don't go to those places because I find I
Yeah.
work hard for my money. I'm not going to waste my money, take a chance in those kind of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the issue was when I found out at the time that the casinos owe something like 15 million guineas more or less to government, I asked the question, how come this is possible? Of course, I said, yeah, there were court cases going on and so on. Court cases going on for years. I don't know how long because it was maybe in the dark because I didn't hear about it until then. But I said, okay, I said, but when I did my research, I realized that the 50,000 guilders that they're paying on a monthly basis sounds like a lot, right? It's about 13, 14 casinos, maybe 15, 16 now. But when I looked at when the law was established, it was some 35 years ago. And even now, as I speak, none of them, not the government I supported, not the one prior to that, not the one before that, not the one before that, not even Island Council days, not even now, none of them are talking about the casino fees being increased.
Yep.
36 years. But
Yep.
you're running behind the seniors and not able to collect taxes.
Yes. Yes.
I got another letter again today for another year again. So
Mm.
my thing is, what's the problem? Why aren't you having a discussion about raising the fees? Because we have
Yes.
no idea what the casinos generate. We don't know. But
Mm.
apparently, in 1997, 1998, a group from the Netherlands, and I told you about this more than once in our discussion we had, off camera, where the report is called the way they say report.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
you heard that name, right?
I'm
Right.
familiar with it.
And good. And on page 128 or 125, I was reading the document. And I'm glad I printed it because it's no long. I don't think you could find it on the site anymore. You could try it on Google See, but I tried it, I couldn't find it there anymore. But I
I
have
think
it.
I have a digital copy. I think I have a
Good,
digital
but
copy.
I have one there. And it said, how is it possible that St. Martin casinos, it didn't mention lottery and so, it didn't start there yet. It said, how is it possible that St. Martin casinos generate revenues to the tune of 125 million guilders and it is nowhere reflected in government coffers?
Mm.
That's a report by them.
Yeah.
So we're talking 1997, 1998.
Yep.
So
Correct.
even back then, you realize that we were not, or we are not, or they are not doing what they have to do in
Correct.
order to collect the necessary revenue that they need. And I will say this, if the casinos can't pay it, they will close down. Not easily neither. Not easily because they're hassle because there's money to be had here in St.
That's
Martin.
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
there's money to be had. That's why they're here. And the issue is, as I said, I don't gamble, but I know that there's a thing called the drop box, where I've had friends who work casino where the money goes into and so on. And I had the privilege when I worked Mullet Bay many, many, many years ago in the 70s, where I worked in accounting, and I can never forget, we got a call from the casino, and they said that they needed, back in those days, Mr. Bakari, your days are more difficult, too technical, too complicated. A phone call came, and my supervisor, the director of Malibu, called me. He said, listen to this now. Go to the bank and pick up $50,000. $50,000 cash and take it to the casino.
Wow.
I did it 3 times because, casinos just win money, but this time they were
Yeah.
getting, let me use our St. Martin term, they were getting blows.
Yeah.
So that will replenish their cash. Now
Mm.
imagine $50,000 cash in a bag. And what I did, I had my little sandwich bag back in the day. So when I finished, instead of I used to put it in the sandwich bag and then walk like I have a normal sandwich so nobody would know exactly what's going on. You know what I'm saying? You have to
Yeah. Yeah.
use wisdom,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
to show you that even back then, casinos, they were trying to lose, but they made money. They made, you and I know, person who work casino, they build apartments, they build
Yes.
homes. I mean, they
Yes.
did well. They made money back in the day. Used to say off of
Yeah.
the tip pool alone, they made money. And that's
Yeah.
another matter because the tip pool has become an issue where,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
employers
Yeah.
taking complete control of it, and that's another thing
Yeah.
so we look into. But
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
what are we getting at? The issue of independence is possible, but of course, we have to know how to manage, we have to know how to bargain, we have to know to use. St. Martin has enough qualified persons to run this country. We don't need help from nobody outside.
Yeah.
The technology is there, the knowledge is there for us to do so. We have to have the courage to tell ourselves we can do it. But as
Yeah.
long as we lay back and say, no, man, I'm going to depend on Mother Holland, I keep telling them, don't make the mistake and call Holland my mother.
Yeah.
Because the continent of Africa, that's where my DNA, that's where I came from.
Yeah.
As they were brought from there to here, they threw some of us overboard to lighten the load. Some
That's
of us
right.
jumped overboard because we didn't want to go to any foreign place at all. But the ones that made it, like you and I and our ancestors, were the strong ones. They survived the voyage. You understand? So it
Yeah.
means there's no situation that we have faced that we cannot overcome. But we have to have the
That's right.
courage and confidence in ourselves to do so. So this debt cancellation, I'm busy reading my book.
Which one? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Britain's
Okay.
Black Debt. You see,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the existing banks, I mean, right now it says Harvard University, they're busy finding a way to pay back and so on. A lot is taking place right now. We have to contact these persons, find exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, work together as a team in order to push our agenda forward.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, if we sit back, they're not going to say, they're not going to get a change of heart and say, something, I'm going to cancel your debt. The late Fidel Castro said it, and I saw his speech. I was reading it some time ago, and when he said it, he was Fidel Castro. These guys are visionaries, man. He said they had a meeting. He said, "Look," he said, "we owed our debt was something like $35 billion back." And the speech he gave was about 15 years afterwards. He said, "I told you all then it's going to increase. It tripled since then." He said, "But you see, what's the issue?" He said, "You all," and I'm paraphrasing a bit, not to misquote him. He said, "You all covered. You all ain't gonna get together and make a fist and tell them we ain't paying it. You're
Yeah.
gonna make deals behind the table on
Yeah.
account and do it." And today what we have,
Yep.
same thing. The
Yeah.
man was right. He was right. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying again, we gotta join together. The Caribbean region is where we are from. That's
Yes.
where they brought us. They scattered us all over the place and so on, you know what I mean? But it does not mean that we can't get together and say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish together and form a fist. And based on that fist there, you go and you negotiate. But
Yeah.
long you stay fragmented, we have no power. And that debt, that control, that financial control, Mandela said it. He said, we have political independence, but we don't
Yes.
have economical
Economic.
independence.
That's right.
And look, the work continues. In other words,
Yeah.
he was telling the younger generation, I did my part, you do yours.
That's right.
You do yours, you know what I mean?
That's
That's what I'm
right.
saying. I'm saying I did my part. I
Yeah.
do the best I can. I'm going to continue to do it, but you do yours. You
Yeah.
do yours. I had some young folks one time, Mr. Bakari, who, they said, well, these older folks in politics and so on. I said, we all know, get together and start your own party. Yeah, but I said,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
I said, we
Yeah.
criticize anything, then
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you do something about it. Don't criticize. Anybody can
Yep.
criticize.
Yep.
I told them I will sit down with them to talk with them and tell them exactly what to do and so on.
Yeah.
But they weren't interested, but they wanted to complain about the older
Yeah.
heads doing this and older heads doing that. And that's unfortunately, that's the problem.
Yeah. No. No. I
you
mean,
know?
it really is. You understand? It really is because they realize that now you have to take responsibility, right? And a lot of people do not want to take on that responsibility. They don't mind having a talk over a malt with some friends, or go on social media and
Yep.
complain. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the actual work, when it comes to the level of commitment you have to engage with, they realize that, you know what, it's
Yep.
more than they
Oh,
actually bargained for. You understand?
yep. Yep.
But I, I,
Yep.
I I think you know, I so agree with you that we all have to play our part. You understand? Because we all are going to be affected, and we all are going to have to carry this debt in one way or the other. Some people might
You
not be
know,
able to see it. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
you know, that's why in our discussion before we started the public and the public discussion on the podcast, I mentioned to you the issue of Curacao, where the Curacao Chronicle said plain, um, based on Curaçao's debt, it's gonna take almost 3 centuries to repay it.
Correct.
So it tells you again the seriousness of the matter. And I don't know. I don't like to owe anybody.
Yeah.
Whatever debt I have, I want to make sure I pay my debt and I'm clear. You know what
Correct.
I mean? And again, this is not about the politicians. I keep telling them all the time.
Yeah.
It's not about the politicians. It's about the people.
Yeah.
The people. And people know whether you're there for them, yes or not. You
Yes.
understand? But at the same time, again, they have the power to send you home before the term is up.
Yeah.
We following things, and look, let me say this: I like our system in the sense of you can be elected as long as you're able to speak to whatever
Yeah.
and so on, which
Yeah.
is
Fit.
good.
Yeah.
And why do I say this? In the U.S., they have a different thing altogether. 2 terms you have to go, and I think I shared with you one time when Mr. From Rwanda, what's his name again?
Igami.
Yep. Yes, Kagame, Paul Kagame, yes. We
Yeah.
had a discussion one time with an interview from BBC, and she tried to ridicule him, you know what I mean? Hey, you all have the democracy, you are there 20 something years and so on. Is that democracy? And he said, look, he said, you don't have the democracy. He said, you all have to change every 2 terms. He said, because the people decide who's there. But you all is not that way. And
Yeah.
now I can add on to that and state this. Big countries or big business run governments.
That's right.
And come back to where we are right now in St. Martin and so on, and what's happening in the Netherlands, in Europe, it is all about big business.
Yes.
Big business and how they can make the money. As someone said, money is earned when blood is on the ground. You see? And that's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But again, how do we, and I really hope that this generation understand the plight, and we are not alive in a particular generation for nothing. We are alive because there's something that we have to accomplish during our period on this planet. You know what I mean? The issue is to identify what it is and pursue it with heart and soul, and go
Yes.
as far as you can and ensure that you leave a trace where the one that is coming behind you can pick it up and continue. You
Yeah.
see? But whatever we do has to benefit people. You know, I don't see the difficulty in it. And what has made me continue? People say, but George, you're not in politics anymore. Why are you harassing yourself and this and that? I said, look, there are people who are afraid to speak out. They'll talk to me.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So then I'm going to talk about it because it's not bothering one or hurting one or two. It's hurting a lot of persons.
That's
That's
true.
even the issue of the seniors. I'm going to proceed because, again, I was told, the person said they told him they have to pay it off in this period of time,
Yeah.
70,000 guilders. And come on. And I think you heard the Minister of Finance said they collected 15 million more in the first quarter. I said maybe that's from the seniors too. I don't know.
Yeah. You never know.
You never
Yeah.
know. But in
You
all
never know.
seriousness, though, you need money. You have an apology from a former prime minister and from the present king. They put aside 200 million to do study, research, and I don't want
Yes.
no museum. I don't want a museum right now.
Correct.
Cancel the debt. You know what I
Correct.
mean? And let's work from there. The museum for
Correct.
me is not important. You know what you did? You have all the files. They have the files, information on who was slave back to the 16th, 17th. They have the information already.
That's correct.
So don't come and tell me you got to build a museum or archive to go to
Yeah.
research what you have already.
Yeah.
Come on, people are saying, man, wake up.
Yep.
They're dancing you around and wasting time, wasting time. I don't believe in that nonsense, you see?
Yeah.
And that's why I want us to understand that's what they're doing. Delay, delay,
Yeah.
put off, delay, delay, put off. You know what I mean? They're going to get tired. I'm not going to get tired.
Yeah.
So let us see what important. We need relief now, not tomorrow. Now. Now, right now, we need it. You understand? SZV, we owe them millions. Come on, the pension fund, we
I,
owe
I
them
was I
millions.
was
Come
I
on.
was get I was getting to that, because
Okay.
our conversation simply centered on what we owe to the Netherlands. You see, we didn't even talk about what government owes to other
Oh,
institutions.
look,
Okay, and then next to that, we also have a large group of young people who completed their studies in the Netherlands who have to pay study debt. You see what I'm saying? So instead of 1 billion or 1.3 or 1.5, it could actually be even much more than that if we factor in the student debt at least. You understand what I'm saying? Because, and I say that, Uncle, to say the following, right? We know that when it comes to austerity measures, right, it follows a particular regimen. Cuts in healthcare, cuts in social, cuts in education, cuts in
law
a number of
enforcement.
things, right? And what I've also noticed is that at one point, when the debt, I mean, from what I read so far, the central bank said that the debt level is still pretty okay, to
Yes,
paraphrase.
yes.
It's pretty okay.
2.7% GDP, yes, right there.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, those of us who are paying attention to the geopolitical arena, the geopolitical tensions, right, and its impact on our small open economy, right? It could, I mean, God forbid, but if it happens to ruin our economy any further, right? And when I say ruin our economy, I just mean that we are not bringing in those numbers like before, right? In terms of our economic growth, that who is to say that it might not put pressure on our fixed exchange rate? Because we know that one of their prescriptions is to make your money cheaper, to devalue your money because it makes your country or your product more attractive. Okay? So who is to say pretty soon, right, that they will not say, hey, you know what, Sir Martin, we might need to, devalue your currency, right, because of these factors. You understand?
That's
And and
that's
and,
a
and next
very
to that, because there are so many different directions we can go. That's why I said it's quite interesting that the more aid we get, the more organizations I'm seeing offering funding. And I'm like, so Martinez, we can appreciate the funding, but we prefer to do it ourselves. You see what I'm saying? We prefer to earn that ourselves. We just need opportunities. And I
yep.
think that if they were, I mean, I haven't really looked at the minister's vision for tax reform, but I really think that they ought to start with those businesses, especially the multinational corporations who owe so much to the island. They should start there, right? Because that is the big chunk that is needed to fund so many vital public services, right? That's the funds needed in order to support NGOs to continue doing the work that they are busy engaged with. You understand? To me, it seems a bit sometimes that the local population is the easiest to get to, right? And because they perhaps do not exert as much power as a result of not being organized, they are more easier target. I've seen in this society, once you are properly organized around your interest, you are able to withstand, or even cause government to reverse certain policy.
You know,
I've seen
um,
that.
You said a mouthful. When you mentioned the issue of study financing,
Yes.
it's interesting because during a meeting of parliament, that's why, sometimes I look at my track record and the suggestions that I brought up, that can only get anywhere if they get the support. Because somebody talking about motions and so on. Motions are good, but I'm yet to see one executed per se, really, really, you know what I mean? Unless the sitting government wants to do so, it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Now, the study
Yes.
financing, because when I mentioned SZV, I wrote an article, which of course, a couple of years ago, I got to see if I could find it. You told me to to put them in the book. I didn't do it. And I mentioned, I said, besides debt cancellation, I said all the debts that Simon owe to pension fund, this one, I said all should be included and let the Dutch pay that off too. I said the study
Okay.
financing should be totally written off by the
Yeah.
Netherlands. I said, let's just start. All those things I wrote in an article somewhere,
Yeah.
I mentioned that point. And some of you said also, when we were attaining a separate status, the Dutch said, first, no, we can't get it. Then they say, not like Aruba.
Yeah.
And then they say, yes, but what they made sure they did during the discussions is they made sure tighten finances,
Yes. Foreign
justice,
affairs.
administration. They didn't care nothing about health and education. And I keep telling people all the time, these people don't care about us at all. It is
Yeah.
about maintaining the control over us there, where that's concerned.
Yeah.
But I said with the student, I tell them plain, that should be written off. And the
Yeah.
issue of geopolitics, I think a member of parliament asked the Minister of Economic Affairs with regards what they're doing with what is taking place right now in the Middle East. Yes, we have a ceasefire right now. Thank God for that, But I do a lot of grocery shopping, and I realize that a lot of the shelves are empty and have been so for months. There's some items they can't even order anymore. I have been told by the staff member that works there, either it's delayed or they don't order because it's too expensive. And then the response of the Minister of Economic Affairs is saying they're busy. You're busy what? You should already have a plan in place. You're busy you should have already been planning for this, because for the time the war broke out in Ukraine and so on, I told them, I said, guys, we are going to feel the pressure. We put everything. Now, there's a strait called Hormuz, and there, okay, you
Yes.
know it. And
Yes.
if they close that, it
Yes.
means oil, gasoline, cost of living, everything goes up. Everything goes up. What are you doing? Let me take
Yeah.
my time.
Yeah.
I'm tired of saying in Island Council, in Parliament, I said it, I said, we have to foster closer relationship with our Caribbean brothers and Latin American brothers and so on. We have everything we need in the region. But according to us, nothing is good unless it comes from the US.
Yeah.
You know? And right now we see there that there's nothing going to come from the US soon.
Yeah.
Aruba went to make some agreement with, I think, is it Colombia or whatever, concerning, products and so on,
Correct.
to work together. What are we waiting on? The region has everything to feed us. We
That's
can
right.
feed ourselves, But the thing is, instead of buying from our neighbor, we're going to fly across the ocean and buy somewhere else, forgetting that if we shop in a region, we support ourselves, we strengthen ourselves, and no matter what's happening outside, once we can feed ourselves, we'll be okay. We can stand up against any storm. So I see the political games going on. I said, guys,
Yeah.
you better put on the back burner right now. Who in government, who not in government, you better sit down, because when
Yeah.
that storm comes, all of us gonna feel it.
That's right.
But you know who's gonna feel it the most? The poor, the one who's
That's right.
struggling. And then it brings aggression and anger, because they're gonna say, well, what have you done to protect me from this?
Yeah.
I mean, people have to face reality. You have to face reality. Again,
Yes.
and it all comes back to proper planning and the matter of finances and what you're doing to prepare for accounting older folks, prepare for the rainy day when it comes, because
Yeah,
it is coming. Because so whatever we want, they're talking about, they have ceasefire right now. One party saying we bomb them, the other say they didn't do us nothing, you know what I mean, and so on. The social media, it's crazy because you're not getting the whole story, you're getting a one-sided story,
that's true.
you know. And Mandela said something there in his book, Long Walk to Freedom. He, he said, what you're getting from them is what they want you to hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He said, not the truth. You know what I mean? And then some of you mentioned about opportunity. He said, it's not a lack of ability, it's a lack of opportunity. Can back to
that's
St.
right.
Martin.
That's
Opportunity we
right.
need, you understand?
That's
So
right.
so the issue is we have to prepare ourselves, we have to have confidence in ourselves and do
Yes.
what we have to do to take care of ourselves. Because that's the only way we can make it in the world in which we live today.
And I also want to add to something, right? Add to what you said, coming back to the geopolitical aspect, within the how you say the context of neocolonialism, because just like what they did to Africa at the Berlin Conference, right? The global North have divided the world according to certain roles. And a lot of people might think that this is pure paranoia talk, right? Until they consider that when we look at the global south, right, at many occasions, their role, their let's say their cash crops, their major exports, right, has been kept back to the point where they were only allowed to produce raw materials where there is no value. The Caribbean islands, it was to be a paradise for the rich and influential and for big businesses and so forth. Latin America was supposed to supply minerals and different resources to feed, right? To feed those multinational corporations, and all the money was supposed to be repatriated to the metropoles. I wouldn't even call it mother countries, but to the metropoles.
Hmm.
Because we were just supposed to supply labor, cheap
Yep.
labor, sun, and resources. And when I look at times with the relationship with at least from the colonial aspect, right, with The Hague, to me, nothing much has changed, especially when I consider the debt that is hanging over our head. Because the amount of time it's going to take to repay that debt, if we ever repay the debt, is generations, as you pointed out.
Yep.
You know what that means to some extent? That is generations of underdevelopment. So we can come with how many great plans at times. We can talk about introducing new taxes or changing the tax structure, but I think that there's very little you can do when you have a debt of over $1 billion. And I want to say this here because in your motion you referenced the debt was $1 billion. And when I was listening to a meeting, right, in Parliament, the Minister of Finance said the same thing. So just in case people think that we just pulling numbers out of the air,
Hmm.
this is my reference. So if I am wrong, that means the Minister of Finance is
Minister of
wrong.
Finance.
Can't get the
No.
information from what? You understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find out.
You
I
you
wasn't
know.
able to get updated information about how much we pay annually,
Yes.
but that much I did get, and that is really serious. You understand? Because again, the money that could have been used to invest in education, in healthcare, right? In infrastructure, right? Research and development, which is so critical to small islands such as ours. All that money could have been used for something else. But now it has been used, to service our debt. And I am just very concerned, about the social, economic, and political ramifications, of this particular debt. Because look at this. You might have more insight than me on this. What I have noticed whenever we are unable to pay the debt, we send a request to refinance, right? But I am wondering, is refinancing always the best method? Are there any hidden dangers when it comes to, besides a longer term, you know, but are there any hidden dangers when it comes to refinancing, as often as I think I have observed? What do you think about that?
Now, but the very fact that you use the word refinancing, it means extending
That's
the
right.
debt.
Yes.
Extending the debt. And I wouldn't even say it's hidden, it's blatant now, because they're telling you plain, they have no intentions of canceling anything. And this is why I said action should be taken. But again, it takes courage. It takes, again, my point has always been inform the public. The public must be brought up to, made aware of what is taking place, what your plans are, and you will know exactly if you have their support or not. And there are also times, though, when decisions must be taken because you don't have the time to inform them. And such decision was, and someone was, I was one of the religious programs, and the person, I think they sent the host a message, and okay, he didn't ask me the question until, he didn't let me know until after the meeting. I said, next time let the call come through.
Yeah.
But the issue was, said yes, because I was talking about debt cancellation. They said yes, but how come you all accepted the debt? I think when it comes to the COVID loan and the COVID and so on. Aruba and Curacao gave up immediately.
Yes.
St. Martin fought until December, from April and May to December. We paid out of our own funds. And then one evening, the Prime Minister called us, all of us members of Parliament. We met. Said, look, if we don't submit to those conditions, nobody gets paid next month. She said, nobody. No minister, no parliamentarian, no school teacher, no police. She said, nobody. You know what I mean? Because they had us there then. You know what I'm saying? And my thing is, again, and that's when we gave in. But I had a discussion years ago, I think during the time of after Hurricane Irma. And I was awakening to the fact because, again, I'm not a banker, so I don't really get involved except you put your money in the bank, you check in, it's whatever, and so on, savings and all kind of things like that, which is changing dangerously by the day because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
more and more control on
Yeah.
you, on your movements, how you
Yes.
spend your money, where you
Yes.
go. People understand that's control, okay? But I'm not going to go there yet. We have discussion on that. But I discussed with this manager, and they said to me that the banks have enough money to take care of St. Martin debt like that. But this is me talking now. The laws that are in place don't allow it because of international laws, because it's government, they can't do X, Y, Z. And I shook my head. I said, you're in my island.
Yeah.
Deposit in a bank is in my island.
Yeah.
And I can't benefit from you at all.
Yeah.
You know, that that's my way of thinking.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how the international laws are, but as I said during our discourse, they are not made to help you and I.
Yeah.
Okay? They are there to maintain control and power and to suck everything from out of us as much as possible and maybe give us some of the crumbs that remain behind. You see? So again, we have work to do.
Yeah.
We have work to do. We have a lot of work to do, but it will come from us understanding who we are, and politicians not looking at their own agenda, because your agenda means nothing when the crisis hits. It means nothing.
Yeah.
But if your people are informed, they know exactly what's going on, what you are doing, you are better able to get their support to do what you have to do. The Prime Minister told us, and getting back to the issue of when we gave in to the conditions, they discussed before they not left government, before they were pushed out of government, because there's a new government in there now.
Yeah.
They were talking about swap, about debt swap and so on, you know. And I say, good, but I still wanted actual cash that I can handle.
Yeah.
Because you swap the debt gone, but I still need money.
Yeah.
That's how I'm saying. So I'm saying pay the debt, and then these are my bills, and you pay.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, it sounds unreasonable. It was not unreasonable when they came and enslaved and killed us and raped and did kind of wrong. So it wasn't unreasonable then. So
Yeah.
why should I come in any agreement that you agree with? These are
Yeah.
my points right now. This is what my requirements are. You know what's interesting? We hear a lot of talk about the Middle East and the United States and Canada and Russia and Europe and so on, but you're not hearing much about Africa. But I'm sure you're aware that the tariffs that the president of the States put on a lot of countries, some is kind of pulling back a little bit because he's making his deals and so on. But China made a big deal with 50 something countries in Africa. I'm sure you heard about it.
Yes. 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 Yes.
No
Yes.
tariffs. Imagine their products are already cheaper than those in the US. No tariffs mean cheaper yet. Where do you
Yeah.
think we're gonna shop?
Yeah.
You know? So my thing is you have to see how you make alliances. And what is unfortunate, and it hovers on dictatorship, is when you're gonna tell me that your enemy should be my enemy. But like Mandela, I think, said it, or somebody said, I don't want to misquote them, the enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
You know? And I mentioned because nobody's talking about the continent of Africa, but they're realizing slowly but surely, and you mentioned it, no more exportation of raw produce.
Correct.
Let us build
Correct.
our factories or
Factories.
refineries,
Yeah.
and then we deal with it ourselves because
Yeah.
we have the raw material, all we need, because those investors never talk about building any kind of
Correct.
factories.
Correct.
Export and sell it back to me.
Said it.
And
Yep.
I can do it myself, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And stop studying in a particular area that is not needed for the continent where you live.
That's right.
You understand? So those are
That's
the
right.
things that I think that has to be instilled in us. And we of the Caribbean stop looking at Africa, the continent, as a poor continent, because we know that all the resources, the most of the world is in that continent.
That's
And
right.
while the rest of the world is fighting, I believe they're growing. And while the rest of the world is complaining about getting old, Europe is complaining because they're getting old, Japan, China, all of them, Africa has the youngest population in the entire world,
Yes.
percentage wise. You know what I mean? That's why they're trying to go there. So Africa has a chance now to build on this. You know what I mean? That while the others are fighting, you keep building your
Yeah.
continent. But it calls for unity.
That's right.
Unity.
That's
Nkrumah, those
right.
guys talk about it. Unity, you know what I mean? So
That's right.
these are exciting times. They're tough, but also exciting times. And I think that we have to have the vision, the insight to understand that this is how I have to operate now because this is what is happening tomorrow. But you
Yeah.
must be able to start now with it. Now, and it takes courage. I don't
That's
want a
right.
debt swap, like I told the Prime Minister, I mean debt swap business, you know what I mean? I want my debt paid off, and I want to send you the bills until I decide when things will stop, and I don't know when they're going to stop because 400 years have to pass. So in 2025 now, so I'm looking at
Yep.
24, 25.
Yep.
You know? Come on, you
It's
know what I
really
mean?
something else. Yeah. Yeah. It's really
Yeah,
something
no,
else, you know?
seriously. Seriously.
And again, ultimately, when it comes to development, it's going to be a bit difficult, you know, to truly develop the way how you want and on your terms with that type of debt hanging over your head
Yeah,
and
exactly.
constantly seeking, you know, funding from abroad. You know what I would like to do, um, just to put like uh, two columns together and just column A, how much we pay debt, and then column B, right? How much we get in funding, from abroad for just to see the movement,
Oh,
right? Because I mean, if we are paying more than that we are receiving, then I mean, goodness, man. I mean, something is wrong with that equation. You
yep,
understand?
yep, yep,
But
yep.
I don't see I might need to study the development history of different nations first to see how they did it, because there are models to do it. But I think you need a type of leadership on a community level as well as on a national level in order to make certain radical changes. You see, but it really takes a lot of courage, and it takes making unpopular decisions for the greater good. And
You
I'm
said that
not,
correctly.
yeah, I'm not sure to what extent we are prepared to do that. Because I've noticed our people like convenience too. So you know,
And that's yeah. Who said in nature? I think the eagle when it wants to get the young one out of the nest, it
they
makes
throw
it
them
very
over,
uncomfortable, and then say,
throw them over.
it better learn to fly.
Yeah, yeah, throw them
And
over.
sometimes you see again the issue is, do we know our importance? Sabre, Statia, St. Martin.
Yep.
And it's ironic how the Dutch treat us as separate. These are the best islands, you know what I mean? But people who have understanding and are seeing, are willing to see and take off the blinders. Bonaire and Statia and Sabre, they are not any more further on improved now as they were before 2010. They are still not getting the same kind of treatment and privilege as those provinces and so on in the Netherlands. So
Mm.
if you're part of the kingdom in this sense where you are best, and you see best again, extraordinary. In other words, I can treat you
Yeah, 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 yeah,
differently. You see? You understand? Let me make sure that you know you're not like us.
yeah.
You are in the fold, but you are not really part of us. So therefore it leaves room for us to treat you differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't get the same pension. They don't say nothing at all. And right now they're talking about cutting certain things too. Somebody get paid too much, they want to take back. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I
Some
heard
kind of
about.
some they want to take back because they paid too much. I'm saying
Mm.
the audacity of it all, of you, what you have done over the centuries, and still want to continue doing that. It shows you the perspective, the manner in which they operate and how they think. There's nothing in them that says they want to benefit you. Nothing at all. And I'm going to repeat a old statement that I said more than once. When I was in the Netherlands one time, they was giving us a presentation. And it had to do with Sabre, I think it was. And I think the bottom is some discussion concerning oil or something went on there. But and this gentleman was a professional, he was not a politician. So he presented the facts as he knows. And man, if you saw the look they gave him when he mentioned certain things, they were upset because we didn't have to know what was going on.
Exactly.
You see? But
Exactly.
again, he is a professional, not a politician. So he just mentioned, stated the facts as they are. So
Yeah.
it shows you again the agenda. I mean, realists can say whatever you want about get rid of Antilles, but whatever. He's going to be floating by himself because they have an interest in these islands. Number one, it makes them feel powerful. You understand? They're in control of something, and they have access, access to all kind of business and trade within the region, and that's the agenda. So if they can see it, why can't we see it?
Yeah.
The late Dr. Miles Monroe said there's an island over from close to the Bahamas. I can't remember the name of it right now, but they used to call it a garbage junk. You know what I mean? Right now, only billionaires go there. The upper Winfrey and all go there and think because why this guy bought this little island and he makes millions out of it.
Yeah.
We saw garbage he saw fortune. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what is it we're not seeing on St. Martin and
Exactly.
in the region that they are seeing?
Yeah.
That they are seeing. Stop fighting each other. Stop dividing each other.
Yeah.
Let us put our heads together because we are all, no matter if we're born in St. Kitts or Jamaica, Dominica, or Guyana, whatever, we all came or brought from the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
And we speak differently because we are scattered. And I just told
Yeah.
him, I told him even in Parliament, I said, none of us know our language. We don't know our real name either. Okay? At least you find out yours. So I don't get a discussion because some people get
Yeah.
offended say, look, I'm not George Pantophlet. That's what they told me. That's what my
Yeah.
my father heard and
Yeah.
grandfather said. But if you get the right track, you'll find out I came from this tribe, from there, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I
Correct.
came from. But I don't know because I haven't traced. But there are those who do their tracing and they find out a lot of things. You know what I mean? I saw a gentleman one time at the university. They were giving a presentation, and his daughter, he was born in Curacao, and very dark person, darker than me, so very dark person. And he was going to this African country because his daughter was going to get married to an African. I think it was Ghana. And when he went there, he found out his relatives, his ancestors came from Ghana.
Wow.
He said it to us in the university there. We had discussion after the break. You know what I mean? I said, look at that. But you said, I'm not an African, not from
Yeah.
Africa. Even those
Yeah.
those African Americans, I'll never be a Dutch African. I'm
Yeah.
African.
Yeah.
I'm African. Don't put no Dutch inside there. No. I don't want to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I have a light skin, because the European ancestors rape my ancestors, I get mixed color.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali said it first, and not me. He said, I'm the son of the white man that raped the black woman.
Yeah.
And my words, that's his words. You understand? So,
Yeah.
and those are realities that we have to face, but we have to realize that we are one people.
That's right.
We are one people. You know what I mean? That's the only thing we can make it if we understand that concept and we work on it.
Yeah.
That's power. That's true power and true strength. It's
I
unity.
listen, I totally agree. You know, it has always amazed me, right? There was a time back in my trade union days, and I would go to the regional workshops. So you're meeting comrades from Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, and you know, there was a time we were talking about food, and we were talking about what I thought is journey cake,
Oh, okay.
but everybody have a different name for it. So one person saying floats, next person saying festival, next person saying this, next person saying fry bake, but we all talking about the
The
same
same.
thing.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think the more we talk and the more we realize we talk about the same thing and we got the same issue, right? That in itself should be a unifying
Right. Exactly.
unifying force.
Exactly.
You see, because no
Exactly.
matter how you turn and twist it, we had the same experience, but we have different expressions of that
Exactly.
particular experience. You
Exactly.
know? So
Exactly.
so I just hear the conversations also when people talk about they from here, they from Africa. I went to Ghana. I had the privilege to go to Ghana. And when I went to Ghana, I saw people in Ghana that looked like people from St. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I was just sorry I was in a bus. I couldn't take a picture with them and tell them who they look like on St. Martin. Right? The same gestures. Look, I'll even get a nice one. Gone in a restaurant, picking up my food. I looking at the sweet potato and the plantain and everything. And the guys who I am with, they're like, Babakari, you know, you're being adventurous. You're picking up these exotic foods. I said, my brother, this is how we eat on the islands.
Okay.
You understand? This is how we eat. So I said, it's a great experience for me to come here and reconnect with my roots. I said, but you all need to travel to the islands and see, right? The continuities in the culture. I said, because it never left. You see what I'm saying? We need to remember, but it hasn't left because we still continue certain traditions. You know. So when I hear the conversation about people saying I ain't from Sema, I ain't no Africa, never been to Africa, and I'm like, you ain't have to been to Africa. Africa is
Exactly.
in you.
And you. Exactly.
Okay, let me
Exactly.
get a better one, right? I walked through the capital, Accra. Nobody didn't know where I was from. I walked through easy. They watch me because they know I ain't from there,
Mm-hmm.
but they watch me to continue about the business. It's only when I open my mouth and I start to speak, they heard the thick Caribbean accent. That's when they
Mm-hmm.
knew that I was not from, from this particular region. But if I didn't open up my mouth, I would have
Mm-hmm.
blended in. So what I'm telling you,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm telling you, it's
Yep.
not like when you're in Europe and you watch certain
Oh,
people watching you because you're automatically not familiar. You don't look like us. But I walked through the streets of Accra, and for them it was like, okay, look at this guy with locks. Some of them thought I was Husa, Ashanti, Iwe. A lot of them thought I was from different places. But it's only when I started to speak, they was like, aha, he's visiting from abroad. So I mean, come on. I mean, we better than that. You understand? We
yep.
are better than
Yep.
that.
Yep.
I don't see why we get so aggressive, when someone talks about your African heritage and such. The way how we eat, the way how we speak, right? Our gestures. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
listen,
yeah. I can get a
I
joke about
hope
that.
listen, I hope we get an opportunity to go Africa and especially West Africa, whether it's Senegal, of
I
Nigeria.
honestly, I'm thinking about that for sure because the video
Listen,
that
when you see it,
that was his name, that the former member of parliament, Randall Bryson, videotaped during the discussion.
uh-huh.
My daughter was at a hairdresser, and who was from Ghana,
There you
from
go.
Nigeria, and the gestures I was doing, like how I do, let me put my hands, stop speaking with my hands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The hairdresser from Ghana, from Nigeria, told my daughter, but he speaks like one of us, and look at his hands, how he moves his hands. You understand? Tell my daughter that I like the Nigerian, how my gestures, how I move, and
Yeah,
when you know what I mean. Now, that's how I behave, because we have to understand that there's some things, somebody say, yeah, keep your hand quiet. I just try,
yeah, but
but sometimes it comes out. It's not it's
yeah,
something that happens naturally. So I gotta tell
yeah,
myself, fold your hands or so on. But it tells you our connection. You
yeah.
can't stop what's, as you said it correctly. I am not from Africa. Africa is in me. You
That's
understand what I
right.
mean? And that is why even the very beast here sometimes, boy, I can identify with that easily. You understand what I mean? You didn't go and learn anything. You're not learning. You just being
Remembering.
aware exactly who you are,
That's
where you
right.
come from. You understand? And I really hope, I am hoping that a lot of us in the Caribbean, and I'm going to talk for St. Martin, we have so many different, they said different nationality and different so and so. We are
Yeah,
all the same, my friend.
yeah.
We are all the same, you know what I mean? And if you learn that one complements the other, you
True,
understand? Where you
true.
weak, I strong, where I strong, you weak, and so on,
Yeah,
and put it together, partner, we can do great things. The reason I mentioned Africa and so on, because I believe that because of what is happening right now in Ukraine, Russia, and that's again, not being part of the whole geopolitical discourse that they're having, but we have access to social media. When you put two and two together, so wait a minute, because you're hearing this side, you're hearing that
yes,
side, you know what I mean? Now, why decipher what is the truth? Who benefits from this? So, you know what I mean?
that's
And when you
correct.
look at it, say, wait a minute, okay, I know what's going on, you know, but you have to be wise in times like these. You know what I'm saying? But I mentioned Africa because Africa, the sleeping giant, is waking up. And I wrote an article about 5, 6 years ago when I say when the sleeping giant awakens, you know what I mean? And that's somewhat Africa. Because all that stuff is happening. Africa have its own wars dealing with
That's true. Yeah.
Sudan, main part in
Congo.
DRC, which are of external influence.
That's
You
right.
understand? External
That's right.
influence. You see, people understand the issue of keeping us divided and fighting now. Because while we
That's
divided,
right.
fighting each other, they're busy robbing and stealing.
Yeah.
You
No,
understand?
it's
It,
true.
it- it's a it's a diversion tactic to keep us divided.
Yes.
But
And
it
to
took few little small
destabilize.
little, exactly,
Yeah.
destabilization. That's the key thing.
Yes.
They don't stabilize, they kill. It's either to cause
No.
confusion or to get rid of you. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And that is why Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, I don't know if you heard, it's Tanzania or Zambia. Which one of them have this woman president? Germany was in
Namibia.
Tanzania, right?
You have Namibia. I believe the president of
Namibia.
Namibia is a
She's
female.
a woman
Yeah.
president, female president.
Yeah.
Okay, she tells
Yes. Yes.
Germany, don't offer no chicken feed. Okay,
If
don't
it's
come
if
with
it's
that.
Germany, if it's Germany she was talking to, then it's definitely Namibia.
Namibia, okay, yes. She
Yeah, because
playing,
remember
she say,
Germany.
look, yeah, stretch the
Yeah,
land is owned by you, and you're not even here.
yeah,
And that is why, again, it's only me talking, right?
yeah,
And I say people don't have to agree with me, but and I know we're talking that cancellation. Look at Mullet Bay because they want to use that because they're talking about the Enya situation and so
yeah,
on. And
yeah.
I am on St. Martin. The land is on St. Martin. You
Yes.
understand what I'm saying? That's why I love when the former leader William Mali went to Curacao. I can't remember which one of the prime minister was there, but when he put his hand on the table, somebody wanted to get. I think it was as to do with it, not the TOT. I think it was TOT because that started a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
oh yeah, that'll collect the money, then and send us our share, and they were playing the fool with it. So he went down. He pounded the plane. If you don't get the money, so by the time you get on the plane, get back the money was here.
Mm,
So I'm saying Mullet Bay is on St. Martin.
yeah,
Great Bay is on
yeah,
St. Martin. But
yep,
people live abroad because
yep,
of law and this and that on
yep,
it. And
yep.
you have my entire island hostage
Hostage. That's correct.
because of law. And you
Yeah,
can't take the land and go with it.
yep,
You see, but again, the international powers that put the structures and laws in place, that's where you have the issue. Because if you say, partner, this land is mine, don't come back here,
yeah,
or investors don't come because you're taking their land, you can't go with it, my friend. It is here and you're not
yeah,
benefiting me. So why can't we use public's general interest and say, partner, since you're playing the fool, I see this person down the road is coming, they want it, give it to them, let us build something
yep,
there, employ people, revenues for government, and then we get a more strong economy. But again, it can't be called the laws they put that they themselves don't follow, that they themselves break. You know what I mean? I sure heard about the ICCJ where the US told these four judges, yes, look, you all can't come and investigate no war crimes from back in Afghanistan and Sudan. But if it's another country, you could go back further than that.
yeah,
All that kind of hypocrisy that you're dealing
yep,
with, you know what I mean? It is tough. So, but again, times are changing, you know what I mean? Times are
yeah,
changing. And again, back to this issue of debt cancellation. For me, there's no other discourse, there's no other discussion. I love what that lady told say she wrote a letter to the king telling him plain, look, this thing about reparations, put it on the table of Privy Council and tell them, work on it.
yeah,
Work on reparations now because it's a discussion going on now for quite a long time. And it's interesting. One of the points from the what's this gentleman from Barbados? He's in Trinidad. He's something of the University of West Indies. Beckles.
Beckles.
Yeah, he's part of this reparation committee too and so on. But what I found was interesting was one of the points that they're dealing with has to do with poverty alleviation and debt cancellation too. I say, wow, because it is an issue. It is a serious problem. And as you said, Berlin conference, when they share us up and cut us off in different parts and so on, separate us to be able to
Yeah,
rule and conquer us. You know what I
that's
mean?
correct.
So
That's correct. That's correct.
our young people, generation better stop focusing on the best clothes and the best music and all kind of stuff like that. You know what I mean? Wasting their time, smoking up their head and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
partner, get serious because the world you're in will only
it's
change if you
changing.
change it. It ain't gonna
That's
change by
true.
itself,
That's
ain't
so
gonna
true.
change. So if you want something done, you gotta do it yourself. You understand? And once we'll see you willing to work and move, you'll get support. If
Yeah.
you sit down and complain and criticize and then contribute to mess up your own island, then you
Yep.
can't say nothing much about those of us who try the best to do what we can do. You
So
understand what I'm
true.
saying? Because you're young, you're strong. Do it now, man. Do it
Yeah.
now. Do it now. Do it now.
So true. So
Well, that's
true.
important. That's good.
All right. Well, Mr. Pantophlet, I want to thank you for your time. You see that we almost hit the 2 hour
Oh
mark,
yeah,
yeah?
yes. Well, I expected that anyhow, So
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
in the
yeah.
comfort
But
of my
I
home, as you said, so that's good too.
correct, correct. But I
Technology.
enjoyed the conversation. You really gave me some stuff to think about. I mean, just now you were showing off with your book, so let me show off with some of the stuff that I am reading also.
Okay, the IMF, the world. Oh, I have a 20-page printout.
Ah,
The IMF and so on, the African, yes. This one, the IMF, the World Bank, the African debt. Yeah.
but this one is 2 volumes, right?
Okay,
One
okay.
is measuring the social impact, and the other one is measuring the economic impact. And then you
But
have this one.
exactly. Listen it. I see the top. Something
Yeah,
poverty. Oh, perpetrating. Yes. Of course. Of course. You know what I mean? And look, knowledge. You
yeah,
have to read the history, read the books that are written by us,
yeah,
not them,
yeah.
because you know what I mean. The one who wants to continue his story can print his story,
That's right.
his story, his
That's right.
story, not your and my story. So we got to print our own history.
That's
You understand
right.
what I mean? And tell the truth. And that's the thing. It's in the books. You have to
That's right.
read. You have to study, research, and so on. Uh, Look, a lot to be done.
No,
A
I,
lot to
I
be
I
done.
totally agree. And that's why sometimes when persons say that they don't know,
Uh-huh.
I would not fault them.
No.
But is when their posture suggests that they don't care to know,
Care.
is when I get concerned because
Yes.
at least when I was growing up, I had to go through 3, 4 encyclopedias to get the information.
Yes. Novice.
Now I can just sit at home on my tablet or my laptop and I can do my own research
Research.
and comparative analysis to
Yep.
arrive at a more informed
Yep.
opinion. You
Yep.
see? Because for the people them who aren't aware of the historical development of an issue, everything seems new to them.
Yes. True.
Everything seems new.
True. True.
Everything
True.
is like the first time, and they are
Yep.
the ones who, and I'm like, this thing, you are so misinformed and
Informed.
poorly
Right.
informed.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that I know everything, you know everything.
Exactly.
We still learning, and why when we learn, we share for those
That's
who
the key.
willing to listen. You
Exactly.
understand? And what I
Exactly.
am saying is that mindful of all that happening in the world, the writing is on the wall. Okay? And power does not concede anything without power. I think Frederick
No.
Douglass said that.
This
Okay?
yeah.
And the only way we are able to stand a fighting chance is by organizing around our interest. That is the
Exactly.
only
Along
way.
our interests.
Around our, and that's why I was very intentional when I said that.
Yep.
We have to understand that our survival is at stake, right? And that we cannot be doing the same things and expecting different
Expect.
results.
Yep.
The writing is
Yep.
on the wall. So I'm gonna, ask you to give your final words before we close off this
Of
particular
course.
session.
And again, thank you very much. Of course, a very informative discussion. I learned a lot from you also. One of the things I want to leave with the viewers is the issue of our educational system. Mr. Amos Wilson said the miseducation of the Negro, and we have to understand that
Carter
if
G.
we
Woodson.
maintain this, Woodson, right? Okay, the
Carter G.
miseducation
Woodson.
of the Negro.
The book,
Right,
yes,
okay. I
yes,
said
yes.
Amos Wilson,
Classic.
yes. And
Classic.
the issue is, as long as you said it, keep getting the same information, we keep doing the same thing over and over again, we're getting anywhere at all. So
That's
I think we
right.
should start first in our educational system by teaching the truth. You know what I mean? As we know, because a lot of times we know it, but because of being afraid and so on of what the repercussions that you will get, you don't say anything at all at all. But then you're also guilty for perpetrating a lie too. So
That's
keep
right.
that also in mind. So
That's
again,
right.
thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope that those that followed were able to gather information on this very important topic. Debt cancellation is one of the steps to true freedom.
That's
Have a
right.
good evening.
That thank you so much. And I want to say a special good evening to our viewers. I see Apollonia Violanas. She was on. She says greetings to the family. Please forgive me if I mispronounce the name, but I see here Kisami Hoshigaki says interesting. Then we have Mama Rita Pantophlet. She says good night, family. Reach
Good
late from what
night.
she heard. Yeah, she said what is from what she heard is very interesting. And then I think the part when we were showing our books, she was saying to stop showing off because she have them too, right?
Ah, that's good. Once you reach them, eh?
Yeah, yeah. So once again, thank you so much for spending your time with us, Mr. Pantophlet. I'm hoping we can do a follow up, in the future. And it could be on a different topic, or we can just continue going deeper into this topic of debt cancellation, right? But I do want to thank you for your time, for the information, and of course, thank the viewers for spending their time with us. And again, I want to remind you all that Malkia's Kitchen will be at the Mango Fest on Sunday, the 29th of June. And she has a number of juices and cakes. She will also be at the Emilia Wilson Park on Emancipation Day with her very extensive menu, as well as R&R will be at the same location, Emilia Wilson, selling the best loaded pastiches and the best ponche crema. And for those of you who want to learn table tennis or enjoy the sport, we will be having a table tennis fun day also on Sunday from 1 until 4 p.m. at the Great Bay Sports Auditorium. We just ask for a humble contribution of $5, and that helps us to cover the hiring of the venue. So, from all of us here at Unity and Solidarity TV, I leave you in the words of our honorable prophet, priest, and king, the most honorable, right, and excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Up, ye mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. One God, one aim, one destiny. Have a good evening and a pleasant weekend.
Good evening, Cynthia.